Welcome to the EKO Podcast, where we talk about you and everything that has to do with you and entrepreneurship. I am your host, Andrea Lovett, and today we have a very special guest, Arias Websterberry. He is the founder of Websterberry Marketing. Arias, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited for our topics.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about Websterberry Marketing and a lot of the initiatives that you have going on. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, Websterberry Marketing, we have been in existence for 8 years now. We are a full-service digital marketing firm, so everything from social media management, lead generation through social media ads. We build websites and sales funnels, and we do a lot of consulting for small to medium-sized businesses.
Okay. So what made you start this?
Honestly, I've always been in marketing. It started in high school. I started throwing parties, and obviously parties is all about marketing.
All
right?
about marketing. Yep.
Building buzz, getting people excited. And once I got into college, I also kind of continued that path. I did a little bit of some small parties. And my mom had a friend who had a record label, and he said, "Hey, I hear you're good at moving people to events, so why don't you do some marketing for my record label?" And that went well. So he said, "Hey, I also have a promotions company since you've done events." So we started doing events, and then I got into concerts and small concerts, and then bigger concerts, and eventually I got into festivals. So large scale festivals. My largest was for 17,000 people at the LA Sports Arena. We had Janelle Monáe, Common, Ludacris, Mixmaster Mike from the Beastie Boys. And that was the kind of the culmination. And that's when I realized that marketing was really what I wanted to do. I got a chance to do billboards and, social media and radio and print and, all this different stuff. And I just fell in love with it, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's awesome. There's something so much fun about just marketing because it's like you see the product of what you've done and you see it on a large scale. And it's like, wow, I did that. I did that logo and I see it on a billboard. Like, it gives you that sense of satisfaction.
Indeed. It's I always find it very cool when you take a very simple concept in your head and then you get to see it out in the world.
Yeah.
Even like with the book, when you pulled it out when we were talking, I was like, oh wow, that's in the world now.
Yes, it's real.
Yeah, so.
Awesome. Yeah, and so I know we talked about so many things, but one thing that really caught my attention was the drive for family values. I'm huge on that, and a lot of our listeners are really big on family values because we have families.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to entrepreneurship, it allows us to really prioritize our families. You kind of get the best of both worlds. You get achievement, you get career, but then you also get the flexibility in your time for family.
Yeah, and there's the bad part of it as well, right? It's like you are always at home.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful thing. So, yeah, I think, family is everything. If you're going to build a business or you're going to generate wealth, what's the point in generating it if you don't have anyone to leave it to?
Right.
Right. You make all this money, you spend all this time building this thing, and then you eventually expire, and then what was the point?
Right.
So yeah, I very much believe that family is extremely important, but nuclear families specifically, I think that's something we are moving away from in this country. It's almost controversial to say,
right? Yeah.
Nuclear family should be the focus or it's important.
Yeah.
And things like that. Actually, on election night, I had this conversation and someone kind of challenged, why that seemed to be such a big deal. And I was like, well, without it, we don't exist.
Right. Exactly. That's literally how the population grows through traditional methods of having children and passing on that legacy. Mm-hmm. But specifically to our community, to the Black and brown communities, there is a lot of controversy because there's things that are happening in our communities where we're needing to grow and succeed, and we need to go ahead and catch up with the rest of the country, and we need nuclear families to do that.
I agree. And look, everyone can do what they want, right?
Right.
The beautiful thing about this country is you have the freedom to do whatever
It's
you
a
want.
free country. Mm-hmm.
But that cuts both ways, and I don't think
Yeah.
there's anything wrong with saying that a nuclear family is what you're for. It's something that you find sacred and important.
Yeah.
Like I said, it seems like it's kind of a dirty word now, or
Yeah.
it's somehow controversial, which I don't see how to state something that's factual. But when it comes to family, I believe that if you can't be honest with people and you can't have open conversations, or people are trying to shut down conversations, well, then they have a bigger problem than you do, right?
Right.
We can disagree on anything, really, but you should do so civilly.
Absolutely. And I think the family is where we first learn those skills.
Mm-hmm.
And the more stable our families, the more successfully we're able to learn those things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what happens with the destruction of the nuclear family is that people, they're not given everything that they need, to see both sides. They don't have the male perspective and the female perspective without the nuclear family.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you balance, right? Yeah. You need that masculine and feminine. You need that yin and the yang.
Yeah.
In order to develop a well-rounded individual.
Right.
I didn't get that.
Yeah.
My father wasn't in the home.
Mm-hmm.
My mom did everything she could to provide for us. She worked 2 full-time jobs to make sure that we could make it middle class. Yeah. She made some sacrifices to make sure that I went to a better school in a different neighborhood. And, it definitely shaped my worldview. It shaped my friend group. It shaped my understanding of what was possible.
Mm.
And I very much think that it put me on a different path. The exposure of seeing how the other half lives let me know that it was possible.
Right.
And once you know something's possible, well, now you just try to figure out how you can get it for yourself.
Exactly. And I like that you said that, because what we're not saying is that people who didn't have a nuclear family are automatic failures.
Right.
Like, you were able to grow, and you were able to see, you were able to be exposed to the benefits of a nuclear family, and your mom worked hard to put you in a position for that. So that allowed you to become who you are today.
Yeah.
A businessman, successful, and having a message to pass on to the next generation.
Yeah, I think that's the critical part. A lot of times when I'm having these conversations, the more contentious conversations, and when I hit a nerve, and they'll say, well, did you come from a 2-parent household? And I'll say, well, no. Well, then you're talking about your mom. And I would be like, just because you come from something doesn't, and it may not be the ideal situation or the right situation, doesn't mean that you need to subscribe to it or glorify it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I have no problem pointing out issues with myself, or things that I've done, or things I've fell short of, or things that I see, whether that's in my family or out in the world. And I believe that a lot of times people are there. It's hard for them to reconcile who their parents were, or their grandparents, or a close friend, or a brother or sister, with you being honest about the fact that they may be doing something wrong, or they may not be doing things to an optimal level, right?
Yeah.
My mom was a single mom, but that doesn't mean that I strive to be a single parent or to make single moms.
Exactly.
It's okay that that's her story, and there's nothing we can change about it. It's done.
Right.
But we can strive to be better.
Right.
Yeah,
and if you are a single parent, there is room to say, hey, I'm going to find a spouse that is going to create that for my family.
Yeah.
And that'll be important, because, like you said before, we need that balance. We need that masculine and feminine to put that input into our lives, so that we can grow up to have more balanced views. And that's a big portion of a lot of what we connected about. Just having the balanced views. I think that, especially given that the election just happened, given that the state of what's going on in the world, a lot of people are just so used to being so polarized.
Right.
So polarized. And social media, it kind of seems to feel the flames a little bit.
1,000%. There was actually a lawsuit where they found that a lot of these social media platforms were liable. They are finding the worst parts of us, and they are looking to pit us against each other and egg us on.
Yeah.
I love anybody who's passionate about something.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it's good or bad, I respect someone's right to be wrong. Right.
That's huge.
So I don't take personal offense, even when it's something that's aimed at me personally. Right. A lot of times you hear about racism on the right and all these different things. As much as sometimes that may be aimed at me, right? I respect your ability and your freedom of speech to say those things.
Right. I
don't believe that the path forward is through censorship. If it's between a white supremacist being able to call me the N-word and us censoring all speech that's divisive or hateful, I'm going to go with you being able to say it.
Yes, I agree with that,
it's important for you to be able to speak out. When you start censoring speech because you don't like it or maybe it incited something, well, then that's a slippery slope. Because today it may be the person across that's saying something crazy that did incite something. And then tomorrow it's you
having hurt feelings.
Exactly. So I very much believe in freedom of speech. I very much believe in the liberty of all people to be able to express themselves, whether I agree with your stance or not.
I totally agree with that. And when we look at history, for example, the Chinese Communist Revolution, you saw like the clamping down on those individual rights that started to happen, and it resulted in just widespread death and destruction. And now you have where the government has too much power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't unstretch a rubber band.
And it's very interesting how we're seeing that play out on social media with all of this censoring that's happening on different platforms.
Yeah.
And now we're starting to see a tilt back in the other direction. So, for example, a lot of people, they're not a fan of TikTok having so much input into our lives because of who owns it. Mm-hmm. We have China, they own TikTok. Yeah. And so there's talks about this ban. They say that it's passed, that there's going to be a TikTok ban. What is your perspective on that, since you're the social media guy?
There's a couple things, and I'm going to say on both. Obviously this is political, right?
Yeah.
So both sides of the aisle will probably be mad after this, but that's okay.
That's why we have this podcast,
right? So I believe that I think when we talked about this, you asked if I thought that was actually going to happen. I think it absolutely is. I think that they're going to fight it.
Yeah.
The company is. TikTok is owned by a company called ByteDance.
Yes.
They are going to fight, and I personally believe they're going to lose. And I think they're going to lose because neither side of the aisle has the political, the bandwidth or the political capital to be seen as standing up for the Chinese Communist Party.
Right.
I don't think any senator or House representative wants to be on record defending this company when we have so many other hot button divisive, things out in the market. And then the other part of that, well, you got something.
Well, I was going to say, also, there's so much evidence of how they have invaded our privacy and like how their technology has been collecting our information, violating, patents, and just basically stealing our technology a lot of the time, our intellectual property as well. Mm-hmm. And so no one's a fan of that. I mean, this isn't about hating Chinese people or anything like that. This is about the governments that have ill will toward our country.
Right. But the funny part about that is, they're obviously doing those things, but so is Google. So is Facebook, so is Microsoft. Every time you say something in earshot of your phone, all of a sudden you see an ad about that. Everyone knows that they're, paying attention and they're processing audio data, but they tell us they don't. It's just amazing how every time you say something just pops up on your feed.
It's actually kind of scary sometimes.
It is.
But sometimes it's clutch. It's like,
right.
I've been looking for this thing and here goes an ad. Oh, I've been looking for this. Now I can buy it.
So it's good and bad, right? It's depending on how it's being used.
Yeah.
But the other side of this is when we talk about these bigger tech companies, right? The Facebooks, the Googles. I believe that one of the reasons this is going to pass is because TikTok is a competitor of both of these two social media behemoths. And I don't think that they like having the competition here in the U.S. market. I believe that they are, very much in favor of this. And I'm not going to say they are tipping the scales, which they most likely are. I don't have any proof of that. But I would not be surprised if their lobbying arm was very much pushing for, or maybe even the origin of this current political issue of banning TikTok. Because if you can get another player out of the market, well, now it's just Google and Facebook splitting the market, and now they can increase their ad rates.
There's something about that that's actually a little bit scary, because now you have, if you can use the law to push out a business. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, in this case, it's okay because it's a foreign business, part of a government that we don't exactly approve of meddling in our business. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, what if it wasn't a company that was led by the CCP?
What if it was your company?
Yeah.
Right? But that's, again, when we talked about freedom of speech, right?
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope. It's fine when it's your adversary, right? Oh, yeah, good riddance.
Yeah.
But then when they use the same tactic or they use the same mechanism against someone domestically or against a friend or a family or yourself, well, then you're like, oh, that's unfair. Well, hold on, right?
Right.
So, again, it's one of those things where you have to be careful when you start putting these things into the market, right? Once you make that a thing,
now it's precedent,
right? And there's a playbook. Hey, we're going to say that you're doing X, Y, Z, and then we're going to get this in front of Congress, and they're going to say, let's have a hearing, and then after the hearing, they say, hey, you're done, right? It's I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this.
I think they're calling that lawfare these days.
Lawfare?
Yeah. Lawfare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this isn't saying, vote one way or the other, but for the president-elect, a lot of people were peeping game and just seeing how he was being accused of all of these felonies, but it's an attempt to slow down his campaign in reality, so that's the part that's scary. It's like, if you can sue someone and bring criminal charges to somebody just for the sake of defeating them in politics or business, that does not make this a very safe environment.
Agreed. With this particular thing, and actually, I'm glad that you took it to Trump, right?
Yeah.
One, he was one of the biggest opponents of TikTok. He was yelling that from the rooftop.
Yeah.
And then for all of you Trump supporters out there, I want you to go look up the fact that I want to say it was either a big investor or the CEO of ByteDance, company that owns TikTok, attended one of Trump's dinners where he was raising money. And then I want to say within a few days after that dinner, all of a sudden he reverses his position.
Oh, interesting.
So don't believe me, go look it up. Go do your own research.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing. But yeah, when it comes to lawfare, I think it's weird with him because honestly, a lot of these things he actually did.
Yeah.
Right? I can't say that all of them, But many of them he actually did, and he's admitted to doing a lot of these things, right?
Yeah.
And as much as you don't want the Justice Department or the legal arm of the government being used as a political tool, right? That's never going to get us anywhere. You don't want to sidestep investigating and prosecuting someone simply because they happen to be in a position of power.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's also a slippery slope. So it's hard to balance, right? Do you let someone off if they've actually committed a crime simply because they happen to be a wealthy or a powerful person or a powerful politician, in the spirit of not, putting your thumb on the scale? Or do you go forward and say, I don't care about your position, I don't care who you are or who you know or how much money you make. The law is the law, and we're going to prosecute.
Right. Well, when you said the law is the law, that made me think about how some of the laws were actually changed in order to pursue him legally.
Which one?
So in New York, I believe it was a statute of limitations that was changed so that they can then go back, and they were able to change the law from a misdemeanor to a felony. So whatever it was that he did back then, whenever, they basically said it's not a misdemeanor, it's a felony.
I think that was more on the fact that there were so many instances and they grouped them all together as a felony. Now, I don't know if that was a new law or they changed that. That may be what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I do know that they said, hey, you've been doing this over, 5, 10, however many years, right? They treat it as a criminal conspiracy because you've been doing it over so many periods of time and you've done it in so many different areas. I'm not familiar with how they changed that or whatever. However, and this is the weirdness of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
You think of 2006, 7, 8 when Barack Obama was campaigning. And then he got into the Oval Office and he wore a tan suit similar to this color.
Okay.
And it was, oh my God.
Yeah, I remember that. No
president could ever wear a tan suit. What is he thinking, right? And it was just all hands on deck. Everything must stop. But Donald Trump is in court. He's got, sexual misconduct allegations, right? In the past, just the very thought or whispers of these things would be enough to tank your political ambitions. He can go to court. Like they can find some credible enough evidence before a grand jury to bring it before, and he's still running. And whether it's true or not, that's not the point. My question is about morality. At what point in this country did we come to a point where we're okay with someone having that kind of issue surrounding them and it's okay? I personally would say, well, if people are accusing you of that, you probably need to take a step back, handle that, and then come back, right? Disprove those things, then come back, right? Not because, even if they're not true, right? You need to handle your stuff because how can you focus on the country when you're dealing with all of these other issues, right? And unfortunately, I believe that that time has passed. I don't think that morality plays a part in this country at all. I don't think that people care whether you're a good person. I don't think they care if you're telling the truth. I don't think they care if you cheat on your wife or your husband. I don't think they care if you were caught doing something illegal, right? And I'm not just speaking about him. I'm just across the board. I think morality is truly lost in this country, and I think it's only going to get worse.
I can definitely see what you're saying there because morality is a topic that people tend to go to as a root, like a core, I guess. They go back to morality. Mm-hmm. This is right, this is wrong, and that's human nature. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I think that for those who support Trump, and despite all of these court cases and all of these criminal charges and everything, I think the reason why they are okay with it and they still voted for him is because they're seeing a different angle of morality. So they are seeing the, you know how we talked about China and the Communist Party, and they're seeing a push in the direction of communism. And whether that's the case or not, that's what they feel. That's what they sense. That's what they fear. Like they fear that you can be persecuted criminally because someone doesn't agree with your, you know, your life choices, like your, you know, from a political standpoint. So that's one of the foundational aspects of this country. The people that came here, that like the founding fathers, a lot of the first people that came to this country were fleeing religious persecution, political persecution. So they want to make sure that that does not have room to grow again. And so I think they take Trump's side, not because they think it's okay to cheat on your wife or they think it's fine to whatever it is that he's been accused of. I think it's because they see him as not part of the establishment, not part of the deep state, or not part of the corrupt system that's trying to oppress from the country standpoint. Not,
and I get it. It's just the issue is, in doing so, you're still, again, that slippery slope. You're now inviting in a whole new crop of politicians that in the past wouldn't be able to make it there, right? And just past him, right? We're talking about 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you'll have many politicians or many House representatives, senators, vice presidents, Supreme Court justices that have all of these issues, right? All these things that because no
one's perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everyone's got their thing, but you're looking for the best of us.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm entrusting you with trillions of dollars, let's not forget that the Senate has access and they control the purse strings to trillions of dollars, right? The president is someone who can push a button and annihilate a country, right? You want that person to have a higher standard of morality. You want them to have a higher standard of decision making. You want them to be above reproach, right? I want to feel that your track record is of making good decisions, right? Because past performance is an indicator of future performance, right? And I believe that I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree with the potential to use that as a tool and that become the norm. But in doing that, you're also inviting others that may not have the best moral compass to also occupy positions of power. And if you have a lacking in your personal life when it comes to your moral compass, well, what will you do when you're given enormous amounts of power?
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point because they say that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Exactly. So I definitely understand that. It's totally fair. And I think what you're touching on is leadership.
Yeah.
Really, because leadership is, I've always looked at leadership as this is someone that's going first. They are doing the hard things. They're getting out there. They're making a way. They're making a path for those that come behind them. And a leader has to think they have to be forward thinking. They have to be 5-10 steps ahead. Yeah. So if, like you said, past performance can be an indicator of future performance. If you look at a person and their life isn't lining up with what they say or isn't lining up with what you want, then yes, you have the right to not accept that particular leadership.
Right.
But I also think that despite the leadership that's politically out there, whether it's the governor, whether it's the president, or whether it's your boss at your job, I think ultimately it's important to focus on the leadership of your own home.
Absolutely.
My mentors like to say, no matter what's going on in the White House, what matters is what's going on in my house. Yeah. So I love that. And talking about leadership, what are your views on leadership when it comes to your company? Because I know we kind of talked about, working behind the scenes and kind of making stuff happen, that's a form of leadership. But then being that face of the company is another form of leadership. And what are the pros and cons of being a leader out in the open, face forward, versus being a leader sort of behind the scenes?
I've done both, so I have a unique perspective. For the last for most of my career, I've been behind the scenes. I haven't stood in front of my brand. I build things, and they make money. And some people don't even know I own some businesses. And I was very content to do that. I've traveled all over the world. I've been to 28 countries now, and up until recently, I didn't care to share those experiences, right? I've got celebrity friends who, play basketball and football, and they're movie stars and, music stars. Like I said, I did concerts for a very long time. So in LA, of all places. So I know a lot of these people. And I never spent much or put much stock into taking pictures and letting people know that I know them and trying to, let everybody know that we're friends. And that's simply because, when you step into the light or when you court public attention, you cannot necessarily control what kind of attention you get or what type of attention you attract. And I was very aware of that because I see the things that they go through, right? I'm at their house when something comes on TMZ or, it ends up in some, gossip blog or, some YouTuber is doing a hit piece. And I was like, I don't really want that in my life.
Yeah, it's a lot of scrutiny.
Yeah. So, leadership is interesting in the fact that you have to, in today's business realm, the biggest brands typically have the biggest personalities in front of their brand. My team has been requesting me to do more of this podcast, public speaking, and all that kind of stuff for like 2 years. And I've always been like, And this past Christmas, that was the second year in a row that one of the top things they wanted me to do was this. So here I am. I do believe that building a personal brand is key to leadership. One, in the fact that, based on the conversation we just had, it makes you think twice about what you do.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's a camera in everybody's hand in their pocket.
Yep.
If something goes crazy, you can be on 100 different feeds within a couple seconds. So that's one thing. But I think that when it comes to standing in front of your brand, there's two things that you need to focus on. I think you need to focus on what you stand for and what you sit down for. It's important for people to know that you're for a thing, but you're also not for a thing. And I think a lot of people get caught up in trying to be politically correct, and in doing so, your brand becomes very generic. You think about someone like Elon Musk, who pisses people off really.
He's
right?
he's not scared of that.
No, and it doesn't need to be that salacious, but you need to be able to. People need to know what bucket to put you in. You're either for this or you're against it, and don't be afraid to speak to that. And when you're honest about those things, it's easier for you to find your tribe. And when you're trying to appease everyone, it's very easy for you to just kind of fade into the background because you're not saying anything different and they don't know what you really stand for.
Right, because you're not bold, so you might as well be bland.
Exactly.
Just kind of not being noticed.
Yeah, and I mean, again, you don't have to do things just to get attention, which, I mean, that's a strategy too.
Yeah.
But, it's okay for you to have an opinion and, again, disagree respectfully.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what we talked to in the beginning, what we talked about when we said just having the ability to be able to look at both sides and in a constructive way being able to, just reconcile those things. But also what we're saying is we're adding in the ability to be clear about where we stand. And I think that intersection of being able to do both is a sign of someone who's got some leadership skills. Because as a leader, you have to be able to understand your people that you're leading, and they have to know that you understand them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to bring people to you that you can't identify with,
Mhm.
right? People, the reason why the entrepreneur, you didn't even used to hear that word,
Yeah.
30, 40 years ago. It was like you either owned a business or you didn't. And now it's,
Mhm.
I'm an entrepreneur. The rise of this entrepreneur, it was when people started building a personal, professional brand.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you want to attract people that are like-minded, right? That think or are after the same things, who have a similar lifestyle or trying to achieve a similar lifestyle. And if you make the mistake of not sharing that lifestyle, sharing those beliefs, sharing your thoughts, sharing your opinions, well, then you kind of just fade into obscurity. We're moving into a time where if it's not online, it doesn't really matter, right?
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying that, hey, you got 1 million followers, but you're broke. But if you are trying to really build a brand, that it needs to be online, and it's not always about, hey, here's our new offer. Hey, we've got this new product. Here's our new service. Here's our Black Friday sale, Labor Day sale. Buy. Many times people want to see behind the curtain and see how the sausage gets made, right? They want to
Mhm.
see, the people that are behind this brand. They want to see the interactions. They want to see the struggle. They want to see the triumph, right? They want the narrative, and you have to give that to them, and that then becomes your brand.
Right. And it's also the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
So that entrepreneur identity, it's like everybody loves a good underdog story.
Yeah.
You started from nothing and now you're building up something. And it's really, really hard to do that, to have that hero's journey or have that underdog story without standing for something.
Well, and also with the struggle, everyone
Yeah.
has a point in their life where there's a struggle, there's a challenge, there's some kind of setback, right? There's few people in the world who have not met much, struggle and setback. And even though I know these things, I do these things for clients, it's never something I've really done for myself.
Mm.
I haven't really told my personal story, right? And all the struggle that I met and the adversity that I met early in life before I even had say in these things, right? With dealing with a parent who was addicted to drugs and in and out of jail, and going into my freshman year of college, and my mom ends up in jail, and being homeless, and losing businesses, all of these different things. I never really thought that was important to say to anyone,
Right.
because where I'm from, you don't really complain about things. You just work to fix them, and then you move on, right? And I realized that now that if my team's watching, now that I've decided to do this thing and step into the public light, if I'm going to tell it, I need to tell the truth and tell all of it, right? Not just the flowery parts where, I'm in Bali or Dubai, driving a foreign car, or, I'm at the Grammys, or, I'm at some business conference and we're sipping champagne on a rooftop. It's the struggle that people, they want that part. They want the rooftop and the cars and all those different things, but they want to see the struggle before, because that gives them hope. When you're in a situation and you can look at somebody else who's made it to the other side, and they say, hey, yeah, I was where you were. I did have to figure out where I was going to sleep tonight. I slept on my buddy's couch, or I slept outside, which I've done. But you've made it across, right? And you've made something of yourself. Well, then it makes their situation look just a little less bleak. It gives them a little hope, knowing that they can make it to the other side as well.
Absolutely. It's the power of going first. It's like they saw that you did it, so they look at themselves and they say, well, if Arias did it, I mean, he looks like me. I mean, I don't see any difference between he and I must be able to do it too.
Yeah.
And that's the power. And I think that's probably why your team wants you to start telling your story, because they know that it's going to attract people who want to do more with their lives, and they see you as an inspiration.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I think what happens a lot of times with entrepreneurs these days, everyone's an entrepreneur. Everyone's got a side hustle. Everyone's got something, right? Especially in our community. One thing I really admire about our community, the Black and Brown community, is that we are creative.
Very.
And we always have an idea to do something to excel in. And I love that about us.
Yeah.
But because for whatever reasons, there have been barriers. There have been barriers for us to get ahead due to racism, due to just not having access, whatever it is. We've had these barriers. And then when we see someone like yourself who's successful, we look at the hero's journey and we see, okay, he's done this. He's inspired people. He's been a leader. He made a product. He brought it to market. He became successful. It's easy for people to mistake that as an overnight success. It's easy to see that as, you don't see the system behind it.
Right.
And you spent a long time behind the scenes building this system. And so now you're telling your story, and this is the point where people are going to meet you. They're going to, when you start reaching the masses, they're going to meet you here, not having seen what you did behind the scenes.
Right. And that's the tough part, right? They, what's the old saying? My overnight success took 10 years, right? And in my case, it took 14, 15, right? You never see the person when they are in process, because not that they're not there, it's just no one cares, right? And I challenge anyone listening to this, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, look around, on your Facebook or your Instagram or just, close friends. Most of them have a side hustle. They have a little business. They have some little thing that they're passionate about that they're doing on the side. Are you supporting their business? Because most people say that they don't, they want to know a millionaire. They want to get to know millionaires or someone who's, really made it. Well, more people would make it if you would support the people that are around you and you'd already know them. You truly know them, not, hey, I'm trying to cozy up to this billionaire. No, that's my friend. And now they are a billionaire, right?
Yes.
If you were to support the budding entrepreneurs, the budding businesses around you, well, more of them would be more successful and you would know more successful people. And when I say support, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to patronize their business monetarily.
Right.
Doing something as simple as just sharing a post.
Yeah.
Which takes you 2 seconds. It doesn't cost you anything but a few seconds to do. But that could lead them to that one person in your network who really, really needs their services, and they end up being their biggest client.
Exactly.
Or they refer the biggest client.
Right.
We step over these small businesses trying to give our money, our time, and our attention to these bigger companies that do not need us.
Yeah.
We would rather give our money to Vistaprint, which is a national brand, instead of the small printer that's working out of his spare bedroom or out of his garage, right?
But I want to explore that a little bit because a lot of times we go for these big brands because they can get it to us fast. They can, their customer service is at a certain level. And there's an assumption that for the small entrepreneur, they don't have the ability to get it fast the way we want it without it costing an arm and a leg. And so I think what's lacking with the small entrepreneur is the systems in place.
Absolutely.
And I know that you have something to offer in that area. You have a company that can help with that. Am I right?
Yeah. So it's called Launch Ignition, launchignition.ai. And it was born out of the need for entrepreneurs to do that, to be better, to be faster, to be stronger, to be more consistent in delivering their offering, but also to help them attract more customers. In my agency, I come across a lot of people in my network, whether they're friends or family or friends of friends, end up being referred to me because they find I'm at a party or, a networking event, or they see me post something and they say, "Oh, you do marketing." And I'm like, "Yeah, I have a marketing agency." And they're like, "Oh, can you help me? And I got this business and I just need a couple more leads. I need a couple more customers. If I were to do that, man, we're going to take off." And when we were earlier on in our journey as a advertising company, we would kind of take on anyone. And what we realized is a lot of these smaller companies that didn't have the biggest budgets, or maybe haven't made their first $50,000 in a year or $100,000 in a year, we would start marketing and we would quickly get a call. I would say probably 9 times out of 10 with those smaller companies, we get a call and they say, "Hey, can you turn off the marketing?" I'm like, "What do you mean turn off the marketing? You came to me and you said you need just a few more leads, a few more customers, you'd be fine." But what we realized is that all it did was expose the cracks in their systems, in their foundation.
Yep.
And if you don't have a predictable way to deliver your products or service to people, and you haven't done so enough to have figured out the potholes and figured out how to do it faster, how to do it more efficient, then more customers is not your problem. It's only going to expand the issue, because what we saw is they would get an enormous amount of negative reviews.
Right.
We'd send you 100 customers and now you're like, "Oh, please, no more."
Exactly.
And then you start seeing all these dings of 1-star ratings on Google and Facebook.
Yeah.
And now people that want to patronize your business are like, "Well, they said they had a horrible, oh no." Yeah,
it turns away customers.
Exactly. So Launch Ignition was designed to find those people that are trying to get their business in a space to where it's scalable.
Right.
In that position, it's designed to help you sequence. It's designed to help you really take your idea and turn it into a process so that you can build it faster.
Right. And that I've had that experience as well. I used to run a marketing company too, and we focus on Facebook ads in the beginning, in the early days. And I remember when I was looking at the budgets, and I noticed that people were asking, "Well, how much can I get from this budget?" And I started to just tell people, if you can't spend 10 times your budget, that whatever the number was that you just said, if you can't spend 10 times that amount on ads and get no results and still be successful, then you're not ready to run ads.
Agreed.
Because they would come to me to run ads when their business was on its last leg, when they have already tried everything and they're looking for ads to save them, because they think, like you said, they just need more customers. When really it's some other issues that are going on. It could be a product issue. It could be a cash flow issue, just not allocating the right cash flow within their own business. There could be a range of things. So
a lot of times people aren't charging enough.
Yeah. It could be a pricing issue.
With
exactly.
Us.
Yeah.
We our self-limiting beliefs are definitely wrapped up in our business. So, where the big national chain across the street might be charging $5,000 and you're like, "Oh, I can imagine spending that. I don't know anybody that would spend that."
Yeah.
So I'm going to charge $500.
Yeah.
Instead of you saying, "Well, what is making them charge $5,000? They've probably figured out a few things that you haven't, right? This process requires this. This marketing requires this. That one software or that one piece of machinery that makes this thing run cost this amount, and I need to account for that in my pricing." So a lot of times the price side of things is a big thing, but also one of the biggest issues that most entrepreneurs are dealing with is they don't have a predictable lead source.
Yeah.
And that's because of what you said. I cannot tell you how many meetings I have sat in and I asked people, "Do you have a marketing budget?" And they say, "No, we don't have a marketing budget." I'm like, "Well, honestly," and to everyone watching, how are you operating a business and you haven't decided to put money aside or at least taken an hour out of your year to say, how much money am I going to spend getting customers?
Yeah.
It is the most asinine thing you could probably do in business. If you have not taken the time to figure out how you're going to get people to give you money and know that you need to spend some money to do so, then you're not really in business. You're playing.
Yeah.
You're wasting time.
And that's not to say that it has to be a lot of money.
No.
Like, for example, in my line of work, you don't need a ton of money to start up with.
Right.
Right. You get your license, you get into a brokerage, you don't have to buy inventory. It's just a matter of whatever you need to spend to make those connections.
Right.
You may need to do some pay to play, or you may need to, attend some events that may cost something.
$20, $50, right?
Exactly. Whatever it is. Or you may have to pay for marketing from your own social capital. People that you know, references, having a grand opening event or something like that. But you do need to think about it.
Exactly.
Nothing is for free.
And that's the biggest thing. Like, I don't get mad at you not having the money.
Right.
Hey, what you have is what you have. The issue is you haven't taken the time to set it aside.
Right.
That's the issue. I don't care if your marketing budget is $50. Okay. Well, what are you going to do with that $50? And if you haven't taken the time to say, hey, I'm going to earmark this amount of money, I'm going to put it to the side, and I'm going to see what I can get with this $50. Well, then again, like I said, you're wasting time. You really haven't dug into this business thing seriously. And the demise of your business is a foregone conclusion, because if you don't take the time, what do they say? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah.
And if you're not planning your marketing, if you're not planning how you're going to get more customers, then, what are you doing all day?
Right. Now, we also have the opposite problem. Of course, we have people who are just not willing to spend any resources into launching their business, getting the pieces in place that they need. But you also have people who just spend too much. Like, they go all out, they spend, tens of thousands of dollars. And I'm one of them. I've done that before. And, they pay for coaching. I feel like it's typically women. I think we tend to invest in ourselves because we're like, for one, it's a lifestyle. You want to have a certain level, access to a certain level of mentors and coaching, and because you buy into it and they're selling you the dream. So you're saying, like, I want to spend this much because I think I'm going to get success from it. But then there's the aspect of, you pay all this money, but what are you really getting? What are you really getting? You buy all these courses. That's why the coaching industry and the course industry has skyrocketed in recent years. But I do think it's starting to shift a little bit. We're starting to shift away from so much it being about coaching and courses. It's starting to become more about doing the action, it being done for you.
Launch Ignition, when we first started, we focused on coaches and consultants, right? The system was great for helping people with a high level of expertise to get that out of their head, get it on paper, and turn it into a course or something that was easy to consume in an educational format. And we've helped an enormous amount of people get through that and build successful courses. But what we are seeing, and what I'm talking to all of my students in Launch Ignition, is that coaching is not enough. A course is not enough. Information is extremely cheap now.
Yeah.
When you look at a few years back, Instagram and YouTube were paying considerable amounts of money for you to just create a reel, right? You just take your cell phone, point it at you, and as you want to do a little dance and someone likes it, well, then they'll pay you to post that, right? You can post 3, 4, 5 of those a day and make money. And a lot of these content creators, which that wasn't even a term until recently, these content creators are all, I want to say the last couple of years have been running to, I'm going to create a course. And the reason they're doing that is because these platforms are paying less, because it's just supply and demand, right? Everyone creates content now. Everyone. You have 9-year-olds who have YouTube channels now, right? So they did that to incentivize people to get the content on the platform, because if their content is there, well, people will stay. Now it's a normal occurrence. You don't have to really pay people to create content. They're going to create it just out of their own quest for attention and ego. So they're moving to this course model. They need a product, right? Now that I'm not making any money on the content side just for, doing my dance on TikTok, how do I actually make some money? So let me create a course. Well, you've got YouTube that's got most of the information that you're about to give in the course that you can give for free. And then enters ChatGPT, which, even if it's not something that you've really seen, something comprehensive, if you ask it the right question, it will give you a laundry list of to-dos, right?
Right.
So I'm telling all of my students that a course, the coaching, is not enough. People are looking for the thing to be done for them. I need the information. I want to know that you know your stuff. I want to know that you're an expert. I want to know that the information you're giving me is sound. However, I'm busy. And honestly, the reason I'm talking to you is because I'm probably lazy, right? And I can speak from experience looking at all of the courses that we've helped create. Usually around 70 to 80% of all people that purchase courses don't finish them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they're getting hip to the game. Most people don't want to buy another course. They don't want to buy your coaching program, right? Unless you're just amazing at it. But typically, they're looking for you to give them baseline knowledge so they know what they're looking at in the form of a course.
Yeah.
But they really just want you to do it for them.
Yeah.
So if you're going to create the course, and that's what we're focused on with our students, is, hey, we'll help you get your idea out of your head. But then let's start looking at some ways that you can build something to attach to this program that actually solves the problem.
Yeah. And I would add to that, I think people are looking for, when it comes to service, they're looking for someone to do it for them. Absolutely. As opposed to a course teaching them how to do it. Mm-hmm. But also, there's something that's irreplaceable about leadership. They're looking for leaders.
Yeah.
This leadership is severely lacking. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've got some amazing leaders out there, but also people not only want to get more leaders to lead the causes that they care about, but they also want to be taught how to be a leader. Mm. And you can only truly teach how to be a leader through example.
Yeah.
Through actual living of it. Mm-hmm. And people being able to have access to you to see you and watch that stuff unfold, so they can really see the hero's journey real time.
Yeah.
And they can implement that and they can really model that.
Yeah.
So it's like we've got two things that are really, really important, that are really things that our society needs. Mm-hmm. They need service, mm-hmm. and they need good leadership.
Absolutely.
And
the reality is you can't lead anyone else unless you learn to lead yourself first.
Yeah.
And that hero's journey is that.
Right.
Right. You had an issue, you had a goal, you had a aim, and you were able to lead yourself to the solution, to the top of the mountaintop. No matter what, stood in your path, you were able to overcome it and reach your goal. And when you can tell that story, paint that picture, it makes people want to buy your stuff.
Yeah.
Because, you have the proof that you've done the thing.
Yeah. You're giving them clarity too.
Right.
Now, I think one of the most powerful ways to do that without charging people an arm and a leg for a course, I think one of the most powerful ways to do that is through books. Mm-hmm. And I know you have a book, and before we wrap up, we'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit. But I also want to say that, man, I have been developing myself recently to become a leader. And I have been in positions of leadership in the past, but it wasn't until, one, I got connected with some really fundamental leaders that have changed the game for me and allowed me to see myself beyond what I thought was possible. Mm-hmm. That's important. Yeah. You want to get into a position of having that. The second thing is those leaders were able to point me in a direction to know what books to read, because here's the thing: most people don't read. They don't read books.
Lord.
And I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. I have recommended books so many times, and I say, you know what? You've got to start reading like 5 books a month. This is what a lot of the top leaders in our country and executives and business leaders are doing, they're reading at least 5 books a month.
Yeah.
And what I get when I tell people that, they're like, how could I do that? And I said it myself in the beginning. I said, how could I read that many books? I can't even like keep my eyes open to finish a chapter at the end of the day. And so what I did was I just sold out to audiobooks. And I even get pushback on that sometimes. But I sold out for it. And so last month, I read 5 books on audiobook, actually 6. And I'm going to increase that because they're kind of addictive.
Yeah.
Because once you finish one, you're like, man, that was amazing. I learned so much. My identity started to shift. And I saw myself, everything around me started to change. I started to change.
Yeah.
I started to change the way I see myself. Yeah. And so for me, reading is just, it's been huge. Not only to allow myself to become a better leader, but to be able to pass that on to others that I lead, to give them the same knowledge that I've gotten. Yeah,
they say you can tell the speed of the leader by the speed of the reader.
I like that.
And
I like that.
If you're not getting new information, well, you're staying stagnant.
Yeah.
But there's no such thing as stagnant.
Yeah.
You're either growing or you're dying.
Yeah.
You're either increasing your knowledge, you're increasing your abilities, you're increasing your understanding of things and improving your skills, or you're cementing bad habits.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people have, myself included. Reading is absolutely critical. And again, I wrote my book because one, with Launch Ignition, the book Content Canon, that's one of the 9 steps within our program. And social media is one of those things that obviously is here to stay, and it's critical to business. So I wanted to make sure that I took some of the steps that we take in our agency to manage social media for our clients and give that information to entrepreneurs that may not be able to afford, $20,000, for an ad campaign, or, can't buy a billboard on the side of the freeway. But you can get your cell phone, sit down for a little bit, record some things, and start putting that out into the world in order to let people know that you are an expert in your field and hopefully attract some of those people to you.
Awesome. So your book is called Content Canon, for those who are going to search for it right now, on Amazon. It's on Amazon, right?
And, Amazon. Okay. It's also in Barnes & Noble.
Wonderful. That's awesome. And I hope you'll have an audiobook coming out.
Yes. Okay. We are working on that. So I actually have to sit down and record it. So we've been doing that the last month. It will be available on January 1st.
Oh, that's great. Good news. Okay.
So they keep me busy.
Okay. Well, I plan to put that in rotation. I have the physical copy, but I also am going to get that in rotation to my audiobooks as well.
Yeah. The key with Content Canon is I run multiple companies. I'm busy, and most of my clients are busy. And to be honest, most of them loathe social media and creating content and having to spend all their time creating posts and videos and editing and all that stuff. So I also don't like it, even though I run a marketing company.
Yeah.
So I said, I have to figure out how to do this consistently without it taking over my life.
Right.
So Content Canon is all about how you can create a whole month's worth of content for your business in one day.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, right.
I need that book like yesterday.
So it's a great strategy. We've used it for hundreds and hundreds of our clients. And it has allowed us to get everything that we need for them all in one sitting. And then, it goes out and they're happy. And then they come back around for another sitting and they got another month, of content. So
sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, that is awesome. I would like to say regarding books, listen, guys, you've got to read. You've got to read. Read Arias' book. Also read other books. I have a book coming out. It's called The Kingdom in You. It's about expanding the aspect within yourself that has the character development that you need to be a leader and to grow your wealth. And it's targeted toward women. But the other thing I wanted to do is I've been reading so many books lately, and I wanted to put together a list of books that I think are pivotal.
Okay.
For the person that, let's say you are an entrepreneur, but you want to know what's next. You want to know what is it that you need to develop in yourself to be the next big person out there in entrepreneurship, and take yourself to the next level. And you may even want to bootstrap your idea, and you need a funding source. You need a source of business that you can create that can power your idea. What do you need to put yourself in that kind of position? What type of mindset shifts you need to have? And so I've curated a list of books that will help with that, and also open you up to different ideas on how to create funding through my industry, because I'm in the life insurance industry, and there's definitely ways.
It's critical.
Yeah, there's definitely ways to build wealth through life insurance and to generate a community and to generate a sense of leadership in this industry that will empower you for whatever it is that comes next. So that's my offer. Get Arias's book, but also I've got other books that I think you should read
now.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, Arias, thank you so much for coming on the show, dropping so much knowledge. I have had a great time just diving into these topics.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see where everything goes with your business. I can't wait to work with you.
Yeah.
And
it's just funny that we ran into each other, and I believe that, all things happen when they're supposed to.
Exactly.
For a reason.
Divine appointments.
Absolutely. Yes. We were talking earlier about building community.
Yeah.
And, I'm all about, supporting Black entrepreneurs. That's my mission. 100X Impact is about helping 1,000 entrepreneurs generate 6 figures in a year, and 100 entrepreneurs generate 7 figures in a year. And I believe that you were brought around at this time to be one of those.
Wow.
I'm going to speak that into your life.
Okay. I'll receive it. I'll receive it.
Yeah.
And I speak into your life that you are going to help those 100, 300,000, 100,000, millions of entrepreneurs out there with what you do. So that being said, let's wrap it up. That's the end of our show, and we will speak next time.